Thank you for joining me this morning.
Good to see you.
What an intriguing documentary, eye-opening. I was wondering though, how does a place called the Dead Sea need rescuing?
I know it's so ironic, like the Dead Sea. I guess it's like when you say, how does it need rescuing? I mean, I guess it's been shrinking. That's the real issue because of many issues, environmental, the water supply to the Dead Sea as well, some of the industrial side of things, potash factories both in Jordan and in Israel that have caused these problems. So, it's really, the Dead Sea is shrinking.
And political neglect, human abuse, massive sinkholes.
Yeah.
All the beaches are closed but one. I always thought, being from a Christian nation, and you would think the Dead Sea would be considered sacred and they would do everything to protect it.
Well, it's really interesting you say that because, the Dead Sea is meaningful for Christians, for Jews, for Muslims. It's, part of our history, part of our culture. Yet at the same time, the riparian nations, which are the three countries that live around the Dead Sea, Jordan, Palestine, and Israel, have their own interests too, and their own ways of dealing with the Dead Sea. For example, the Palestinians don't really have access to the Dead Sea anymore because of the Israeli, political situation. Israel has, been trying to figure out how to rebuild the Dead Sea. But at the same time, the Jordan River used to feed the Dead Sea and it isn't anymore. It's feeding agriculture. And on the Jordanian side, it's pretty much the same thing. So, yes, it's a holy site. And I think everyone worldwide recognizes that. But unfortunately, politics have gotten in the way. And so has, economics, let's be honest. It's not
Right.
just
Nobody wants to brunt the money to restore the sea or to keep its upkeep but is there one country out of those three that is there? So there's no one jurisdiction. Do they all have commissions that work together, or is there some sort of organization? Or
well, there's activist organizations that are working together, like Friends of the Earth Middle East have been working to. Actually, that's not their name anymore. They're called EcoPeace, and they have offices in Jordan and Tel Aviv, and in Amman, Tel Aviv, and on the West Bank. And they've been trying to find solutions as well to how to sustain the Dead Sea. But like Jordan and Israel, we're talking about a massive, massive, project to bring water back to the Dead Sea, but it was just too expensive.
wow, so there's no official like government agencies working on this. It's up to private groups to bring awareness into.
No, the Red Dead project, which was basically taking water from the Red Sea and putting it into the Dead Sea, was a governmental initiative. But it's a very, very expensive one too.
And a major drawback is also the water source for the sea was it curtailed or just missing altogether now? Or
well, it's been cut off, which was the Jordan River.
Unbelievable.
And there's also, of course, like in many parts of the world, less water. Climate change has caused problems in terms of the water levels going down. So it's been very complicated, very complex.
I always thought, being from Las Vegas, that, Death Valley is the lowest place on earth. And I've come to find out the Dead Sea is,
Exactly. Who knew?
Who knew, right? So is there hope for the Dead Sea? Is there still time or?
Well, it's funny because I went to the Israeli side of the Dead Sea for the first time when I was 16 years old. So we're talking about around 40 years ago. And I have to say, like, I've seen the progression of the Dead Sea. First of all, the water shrinking, and the sinkhole situation is really quite devastating. So is it possible to repair it? I think to a certain extent, but will it ever be what it was 40, 50 years ago? I doubt it.
And what about the people of those three countries? Is there a public awareness to save the Dead Sea, or is it about educating them? Or because I think if you got the people involved, then the governments listen.
Yeah, I mean, I think that every government has its priorities. I mean, Jordan has a refugee issue. Israel, of course, is very involved in all kinds of difficulties, including their own political situation. Palestinians have very little power in the region. But I think, more and more people are becoming aware of this. There's no question. And certainly on the Israeli side, and I suspect on the Jordanian side, you have kibbutzes and hotels that are suffering because of what's going on, and people who've lived there for many years who are seeing, like as you see in our documentary, our VR pieces, that people are losing their homes. So of course they're impacted by this.
And your movie is a call to action. So how can viewers watching your documentary, how can they help? What can they do?
Well, they can, first of all, there's petitions going around. They should see the movie for one. It will be available on Vimeo on demand in about a week. And then the VR pieces will be available on Steam. But it's really about, we're going to have our own calls to action, whether it's, letters that we're going to send to all three governing bodies, environmental agencies, water agencies in these three countries. And I think that's really starting to put a bit of the pressure on, and also seeing that as you said before, which I think is so important, the Dead Sea means something to people worldwide. It's not just something for the region. And I think that's the key.
Wonderful documentary. Thank you so much for bringing awareness to this. Good luck at the rest of the South by Southwest Festival. And
thank you. And great to meet you.
We'll talk again soon. I can't wait to see what you do next.
Take care. Thank you. Bye-bye.